In Brazil, the people bid a final farewell to football legend Edson Arantes do Nascimento after his burial in the mausoleum of the memorial Necrópole Ecumênica. In Peru, acts of repression continue against demonstrators demanding the release of former President Pedro Castillo and the convening of a constituent assembly. The United Kingdom's national health system is under emergency status due to a new wave of staff walkouts. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We'll begin with the news. On Tuesday in Bolivia, the Ombudsman's office has called for peace in the face of the constant protests in the city of Santa Cruz de la Sierra that have followed the imprisonment of Governor Luis Fernando Camacho. Sheila Gomez, delegate of the governmental institution, said 16 criminal cases are under investigation regarding the taking of institutions such as airports, setting public buildings on fire, together with aggressions against journalists. She also denounced the violation of the rights of civil servants who had their homes burned or had chemicals thrown at them. The representative of the Ombudsman's office urged all sectors to stop aggressiveness and violence in view of the confrontations between violent sectors and law enforcement. The Bolivian government complained on Tuesday about the interference of Spanish parliamentarian Victor González and Chilean lawmaker Luis Fernando Sánchez during protests taking place in Santa Cruz. González and Sánchez arrived at the regional police command in Santa Cruz, along with pro-Santa Cruz Committee President Rómulo Calvo, to rebuke the police chief for firing gases at the demonstrators. Justice Minister Ivan Lima said the actions of the parliamentarians are serious interference. He also announced that a diplomatic complaint would be filed to the governments of their respective countries governments and requested no accreditation from the Bolivian government to carry out observation work. In Ecuador, violence and disputes between criminal gangs associated with drug trafficking led to the death of 192 minors in 2022. According to national police statistics, most of the children were 12 to 18 years old. This is more than twice the figure of 2021, when 92 children and adolescents died, and also exceeds the 57 minors killed in 2020. Local media pointed out that in 2022, over 195,000 minors dropped out of school, mostly aged 16 and 17, because it is at that age that they are recruited by drug gangs. This represents 34% of the students nationwide. International cruise ship Amadea arrived in Venezuela's Margarita Isle on Tuesday, the first cruise ship to arrive in the country in 15 years. Officials say that the arrival of this cruise ship helps counter economic sanctions and opens opportunities for developing inbound tourism for Venezuela. More than 500 passengers from Germany, Austria, and Switzerland arrive aboard the ship, and they tour the beaches, colonial, and historical areas of Margarita Isle. The ship arrived from Trinidad and Tobago and will continue to Bonaire. In El Salvador, Defense Minister Vice Admiral René Francis Marino announced on national television that the war against gangs will continue during 2023 until people's tranquility is guaranteed. Marino said that military fences will be set up to extract gang members and protect the population in all places where it may be necessary. The official added that 2022 was the safest year in the country's history, with 169 days without homicides and a homicide rate of less than 8 per 100,000 inhabitants. Authorities say the progress made in terms of security has been enabled by the Territorial Control Plan, which went into effect 1 month after the inauguration of President Nayib Bukele on June 1, 2019, as well as to the implementation of the state of exception decreed by the Assembly on March 27, 2022. The Presidency of the Republic said on social media that their aim is for 2023 to surpass 2022 as the safest year in history. On Tuesday in Brazil, the President of the Venezuelan National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, attended a ceremony to reopen the building of the Venezuelan Embassy in Brasilia. The building had remained closed since the illegal break-in of a group of supporters of Juan Guaidó in 2019. Rodriguez thanked the Brazilian social movements that protected Venezuelans who, harassed by the government of former President Jair Bolsonaro, spent 3 years inside the facilities. The meeting reaffirmed solidarity with the current government headed by President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva, in addition to promoting peace diplomacy, strengthening bilateral cooperation ties, and defending the principles of sovereignty and self-determination of the people. Rodriguez traveled to the neighboring country to participate in the inauguration of Brazil's new president. The Brazilian government announced President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva's first international tour for January 23. The South American nation's Foreign Minister Mauro Vieira explained that the new president will make his first trips to Argentina and Uruguay, while he is expected to travel to the United States and China to boost bilateral relations. During his first official visit to Argentina on January 23, da Silva's agenda will be focused on strengthening ties between the two nations. Let us take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok at the account of teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. All the stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. On Tuesday, Brazil held the burial ceremony of former football legend star Edson Arantes de Nascimento, better known as King Pelé. Pelé's remains now rest in the memorial of Santos City's ecumenical necropolis. They were transported there in a funeral procession escorted by public force officers. The cortege that previously crossed the entire city to take the former sportsman to his final resting place was also accompanied by thousands of people who crowded the streets to say farewell to the former Brazilian star, who died last Thursday at the age of 82. Our correspondent Ignacio Lemos gives us more details.
Edson Arantes do Nascimento was given a final farewell at Santos Stadium by fans, his family, friends, art and political personalities. President Lula da Silva, on his first government agenda outside of Brazil, came to pay his last respects to one of the most popular figures on the planet.
Pelé represents soccer. Without Pelé, soccer would be different and our life here at Santos would be different.
After the wake, a crowd accompanied Pelé through the streets of Santos.
Everything we do today will not be enough. It will never be enough. He's the king of the century, the soccer of the century, who created the place of the century. He is the imitation of the century.
From balconies, terraces, and windows came applause for the star.
Of course, it is very sad, but it is very exciting to be here and to be able to verify, to see the Brazilian people, everybody, the children. I spent the whole night in the street.
Gilson moved from Minas Gerais to Santos to accompany his son in his dream of becoming a soccer player, following the same geographical route as Pelé and his family.
My son came to play for Santos. The whole family came. We are here very happy. God will bless him. We are very pleased and hope that he will also be a great player.
Those who saw Pelé live do not doubt saying that he was the best in history. For the youngest, he is also a reference.
Without Pelé, Santos would be much less than what it is, and for me, Pelé was the best player in history.
The passion for Pelé has no borders.
I am Colombian. I am here today on my birthday, January the 3rd, and I am burying my idol.
The most emotional moment of the procession was the arrival at the house of Doña Celeste, Pelé's mother.
This place, this corner of the city, is known as the corner of Pelé's son and Pelé's mother, Doña Celeste, who is 100 years old.
At the end of the walk, Pelé's remains were buried during a family ceremony at the Necrópole Ecumênica Memorial. Since 1940, the history of the greatest sportsman that humanity ever saw in the last century travels through Santos and up to infinity.
Ignacio Lemos y Julia Nassif para teleSUR.
In Peru, acts of repression continue against demonstrators demanding the release of former President Pedro Castillo and the convening of Constituent Assembly. Conservative political sectors are holding this Tuesday a march called March for Peace in several cities of the country and will have the support of the National Police. Meanwhile, social movements denounce that state forces violently attacked demonstrators protesting against Dina Boluarte on Monday at Plaza Manco Capac in the district of La Victoria. They also continue to demand Boluarte's resignation and the release of former President Pedro Castillo.
Today, the right wing is a group of power that has programmed the March for Peace, and I hope for peace. What peace are we showing? What peace do we want to spread when the attempts to evict us continue? We are in a public place. We are in a public square. The only thing we're doing, brothers, is to demand our rights. We do not have many demands. Do you know why they're doing it? Because tomorrow, starting at midnight, the national strike will begin here in Peru, and we want to wait for our brothers here in the Manco Capac Square.
In Peru, Cardinal Pedro Barreto called on the authorities and civil society to foster dialogue and respect for people's rights in order to overcome confrontations. The Vice President of the Peruvian Episcopal Conference called for dialogue to overcome the current social crisis. He also pointed out that most people want peace and justice for the loss of lives during the demonstrations. In this sense, Barreto considered the situation in the country to be critical. This while various political and citizen organizations announced the resumption of protests on Wednesday, January 4th. On Tuesday, sectors of the Yellow Vest movements announced the return of their anti-government protests in France with a mobilization on Saturday in Paris. In their call on social media, they asked to reject in the streets the retirement system reform, inflation, and the repeated use by the government of Article 49.3 of the Constitution, which allows the adoption of draft laws without a parliamentary vote. At the moment, the call is to march in Paris, although demonstrations in other cities are not ruled out. The Yellow Vest put President Emmanuel Macron in check at the end of 2018 and beginning of 2019 with massive protests, which were triggered by the intention to raise the cost of fuel. However, the movement ceased to have prominence in recent years, beyond some isolated actions and attempts to resume it. The United Kingdom's national health system is in crisis, with 13 hospital trusts declaring emergency status at the start of the new year due to a new wave of staff walkouts. Strikes, staff shortages, and rising hospitalization have raised concerns across the nation. Some of the country's top doctors are warning that the pressure on the national health system is causing avoidable harm to patients. Matthew Taylor, chief executive of the NHS Confederation, warns that the system cannot continue in its current state. Meanwhile, the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is preparing anti-strike legislation that is expected to expand into more sectors this month. This Tuesday, 2 helicopters collide, leaving 4 dead on Australia's Gold Coast. The accident occurred around 2 o'clock local time on a sandbank near an Australian tourist hotspot. One of the helicopters was taking a tourist joy flight along Queensland's scenic Gold Coast with 6 people on board when its rotor blades smashed into the cockpit of the other helicopter that was coming in to land with 7 people on board. Between the fatalities were a British couple and one of the pilots.
At this stage, we've got 4 people who have tragically lost their lives. Another 3 are in a very serious condition in hospital. The second helicopter coming into land, now that has remarkably managed to land upright, and considering the damage that was done to the front left-hand section of that helicopter where the pilot was sitting, that's been a remarkable achievement. So whilst it has been very tragic that 4 people have lost their lives and many families are mourning this morning, we could have had a far worse situation here, and the fact that that one helicopter has managed to land has been quite remarkable.
More news coming up after a final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back from the South. This Tuesday, in a ceremony, 5 countries have been elected to serve as non-permanent members in the United Nations Security Council. In the ceremony, Japan, Malta, Switzerland, Mozambique, and Ecuador are the responsible body for the maintenance of global peace and security beginning this January 2023. The Security Council of the UN is composed of 15 members, and these 5 countries have been elected following a vote in the General Assembly this Thursday to serve at the Council for a period of 2 years. In Western Sahara, the National Secretariat of the Polisario Front reiterated on Tuesday its rejection of any approach that disregards the rights of the Sahrawi people to self-determination and independence. The leadership of the organization reaffirmed their decisions to defend the sovereignty of its territory and natural resources with all legitimate means at its disposal, including armed struggle. Similarly, the Secretariat urged the African Union to put an end to the flagrant aggression and illegal occupation of the territory of the Sahrawi Republic by the Kingdom of Morocco, another member state of the Continental Organization. In this way, the leaders demanded urgent measures to comply with the principles and objectives of the Union's Constitutive Act, particularly in regards to the borders inherited after the independence, as well as the prohibition of the acquisition of territories by force. The Iranian people commemorate on Tuesday Lieutenant General Qasem Soleimani, who was killed 3 years ago by a U.S. drone strike near Baghdad International Airport. Speaking at a ceremony to mark the 3rd anniversary of the assassination, President Ebrahim Raisi emphasized that the people and the government of Iran will never forget the bloodshed by General Soleimani and will take retaliation on the United States for the crime. People gathered in the southeastern city of Kerman, General Soleimani's hometown, to pay tribute to the iconic commander. Similar ceremonies were also held in the Iranian capital Tehran and other cities including Esfahan, Yazd, Birjan, Rasht, Sharq-e-Khord, and Arak. On Tuesday, Nigerian authorities confirmed that 4 security officials were killed in a car bombing targeting a former government official in the southeastern area of the country. In Imo State, the bomb attack on the convoy carrying former Governor Ikedi Ohakim left 3 policemen and a paramilitary dead, Police Commissioner Mohamed Barda said. The attack was an unfortunate setback to the government's efforts to restore peace in some of Nigeria's strife-torn southeastern states. In recent years, southeastern Nigeria has seen an increase in violent attacks, often blamed on separatists trying to break away from the West African nation to form an independent country. The attack has raised fears among local residents who are afraid that security will be threatened in the area during the country's presidential election in February. We've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.